Welcome to The Gut Check, Nutrition and Gut Health for Active People, a podcast where we are talking functional nutrition for functional fitness and a functional you. Remember, if your gut is not functioning optimally, you are not functioning optimally. I am your host, registered dietitian and nutritionist, and OCR fan, Kate Klein. You can connect with me on Facebook at The Dublin Dietitian, or go to my website for additional resources, services, and the video recorded versions of these episodes at www.dublindietitian.com. That's DUBLINDIETITIAN. As a standard disclaimer, the information provided here is for educational purposes only. While I strive to provide accurate and helpful information to my listeners and viewers, I cannot take into account individualized circumstances. This is not a substitute for personalized nutrition, health, and medical advice from a health professional. If you are ready to get your personalized plan, you can go to dublindietitian.com and schedule a complimentary strategy session to get a game plan in place for you to hit your health and fitness goals. So let's get to it. Welcome to this next episode. Thanks for listening in. I always hope these are helpful topics, but I hope this is a hopeful topic. We're going to talk a little bit about therapeutic diets or prescribed diets, or using diets for specific medical situations and things beyond just like a weight loss diet. And specifically what you should be aware of if your doctor tells you, hey, follow a keto diet. Like, what does that mean? Is it truly a keto diet, or is it low carb? If a doctor tells you to follow a low FODMAPS diet, maybe to help with your IBS or your runner's trots, your GI issues, maybe somebody recommends you do the AIP or Autoimmune Protocol. So we're going to talk about, like, why does a doctor recommend one? And do you really need to follow it? Like, what does it mean? What are they? What are the pros and cons and some common pitfalls? And what should you be aware of long term? So why I think this is an exciting and hopeful topic is because there are so many people who find themselves stuck on a diet. They've got this growing food anxiety. They fear eating. They're getting stressed about it. Maybe I've had people who kind of struggle with a social life. They're exhausted from trying to stick to one elimination diet month after month after year, like doing an Everly Well test and just repeating it every 4 months, trying to feel better. So I'm here to tell you, spoiler, you should not just be stuck on any of these restricted diets the rest of your life. There needs to be a game plan to address the root cause of why you were prescribed this diet in the first place. Otherwise, you're just using that diet like a pill to mask symptoms or numb the issues. So we're going to talk about why a doctor may prescribe one of these, or why you may feel better on it, and what that means regarding what you should be looking deeper into if you want to be able to get off of one of these. Of course, like anything, this doesn't apply to everybody. Some people can do one of these protocols, see results within like 2 to 6 weeks, and then get back onto like a full, normal, healthy diet. But a lot of people get stuck. So if you have felt stuck, know that there are some solutions. These are things functional medicine looks at and things we can do for you. Conventional medicine and most doctors may not be up to date on all the research, but others are. So you can get back to eating basically any whole food in a balanced diet if you heal the root cause. So listen in, share with anyone else who may have felt stuck. And last thing I want to say before we dig into the content is that any sort of engagement that you can offer is so meaningful to me. So if you can, like, comment, subscribe, or better yet, share this video or podcast with somebody that you think can appreciate it. It helps me so much in the algorithms to help get these videos and podcasts seen, the awareness spread, give people hope, and it means a lot to me as a creator and educator in creating this and other content. All right, all that said, let's get back to it. So we're going to talk. This was a question I had received from someone that they asked for me to cover at some point. So
talking about diet
types for medical issues. So real quick to sort of weed out what we're not going to talk about. We're not going to get into like the standard heart healthy diets that are talked about, like a Mediterranean, a low fat, whole foods, clean eating. Like those are all good, but we're setting that aside just because we only have up to an hour. Yep. don't want to go
you
too
only
long.
want to hear us for up to an hour. Let's be honest.
Yeah, that's really
we're
true.
wonderful.
I mean,
but you don't want to hear us talk for like 3 hours.
It's so fun to listen, but you know. So
we think you're reasonable.
You know, I've had someone say they listened while they were driving, someone while they were cooking, so different things. So I appreciate that. So hello, guys. I'm glad you like listening. But yeah, we'll keep it limited too.
Yes.
So the things that I have had kind of come up most, I guess these would be like the frequently asked questions about prescribed diets from medical professionals to the patient or the client. And kind of tapping back into episode 1, where I get frustrated because this is not the wheelhouse of most doctors. Right. And it frustrates me that I appreciate so much that they're trying, but they're not quite doing justice to their patients because they're not getting it quite right. And that is damaging. That is stressful to the patient, and it's not the best care. So if you have a doctor who prescribes a diet, I encourage you to ask questions. I encourage you to reach out to me or Andee and get more information.
Yep. Your doctor does not have the dietary education, nor in most cases dietary experience, to necessarily help you in the most efficient or effective way to achieving what your goals are. And Kate, I think I'm going to kick it off a little bit with you and say, my favorite is the like, hey, you've been given X condition, you know, we figured out that we think you have X problem, so you need to do Y diet to address that. And why, you know, in so many cases, that particular diet is not necessarily a solution to the problem, but a good starting point at then further addressing it. And guess what? You still need a whole lot of information and education to get there. And in my experience, you know, I'm going to wear my health coaching hat. I'm seriously, I'm gonna get a set of flashcards.
Okay, that would be like really funny. Like I'll have to get like a personal trainer, the dietitian, the health coach.
Yeah, I'm seriously gonna have like just a stack of labeled hats and start pulling them over.
So guys, that's what we could use for Christmas, or some like homemade silly hats with all these Velcro labels.
Knitters, if you're out there, I want hats so that I can wear. I will give you a set of names to put on them. But it would be exhausting to me where someone would say, oh, I've been put on a low FODMAP diet, or I've been, you know, told to go keto, or I've been told to go paleo, and that's going to address my whatever. Well, do you know how to do that? Well, I think that's this. Did your doctor give you any information about it? No, he just said to look on the internet.
Or here's a list of foods, but it's overwhelming me.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And they said, good luck.
Or here's a sample diet. Keyword, sample. Sample.
Yes. So kind of hitting on that. Now, again, real quick disclaimer. This is not to say that no doctor knows what they're talking about, that no doctor has been trained in this. It is just in my experience and from my time in clinical and working in medical nutrition therapy and networking, it is what I do see as a more likely scenario.
Yep. And, you know, from my experience on sort of the clinical side of things, physicians don't get nutrition education, and they also don't get the depth of it. And quite frankly, it's also not their jobs, right? Like, they're there to diagnose and prescribe and many other things, but patient education and behavior change and a lot of the other things that are really what we're talking about don't sit in that physician conventional medicine wheelhouse. It's just not there. And like with the amount of time that a physician has in that 15 minutes with a patient, they're not necessarily really, they're more concerned with, let me make the right diagnosis, let me get you the medication that you may or may not need, and let me make sure you have all of the very important pieces.
Yeah. So if you want more info on that, I know we dove into that on the one, I think it was on labs, talking about restraints and everything. So we got into that. Yeah, I've heard it described, and I really like this. Doctors are the lifeguards at a swimming pool. Like in an emergency, they are there, they can jump in, they can pull you back. Life coaches, dietitians, health coaches, wellness coaches, they are the swim instructor, trying to help it so you don't get to that point
That's
of
a
drowning.
great analogy.
Yeah, right. I love that analogy.
Awesome.
I'm like, that's great, because they are very important. Doctors are very important, very good at what they do, but it is not that in their wheelhouse to do all the time of educating and preventative and behavioral and all of that. So
that is an awesome analogy. Yeah, they're truly they're the ones to pull you out of the pool.
Yes. But so the diets that I have most recently run into questions of and see being prescribed to people are a keto diet, a low FODMAPS diet, and the AIP or Autoimmune Protocol diet. So again, there's nothing inherently wrong with these diets, but I want to get into the pros and cons, and where, if that is what you're prescribed, kind of what you need to be asking about it.
Yes, there are big question marks that you need to be taking with you or taking back to your physician. If you've been told that this is how you're going to solve your problem,
reach out to me. Let's talk. So let's start with keto. It's one that has been gaining a lot of ground in the past few years as just a general healthy diet, one that even more endurance athletes are starting to look at. There is more and more research, and there is promising research behind it.
Yes, there's a lot of promising research behind it.
A lot of promising research behind it. It originally started as a diet to help manage epilepsy in children. And it is now being studied to look at the other health benefits, maybe dealing with cancer, maybe dealing with diabetes, maybe dealing with all this stuff, and they are looking at it.
I've actually talked with some of the folks about the cancer benefits. It's really interesting. So, another topic for another time.
Okay. Add it to the list. So one of the things that, like, a lot of people come to me, so my doctor put me on a keto diet, what does that mean? Or they said low carb. So there's not, colloquially speaking, when people talk about a keto diet, there's not an exact regimented agreement, but typically, to truly be in a keto diet, it's roughly 50 grams of carbs per day or less.
Yes.
Or less, some getting down to 20 grams. And that starts to cut out even your healthy foods that are low carb. That even means you have to minimize your vegetables, because there are carbs. There's going to be like 3 grams of carbs in a cup of spinach. So it gets really, really cautious at that very, very low carbohydrate level. But doctors don't always mean that, and that's what's frustrating. They tell people to go on a keto diet, but then in their mind, they're just like, well, as long as it's like low carb, like 150 or 100. That's not a keto diet.
That's not keto. That is not keto. Keto is like you're getting upwards of what, 50 to 80% of your calories from fat in total.
From fat. Yes, and that's that's very good point. Yes, that's a problem I see. A lot of people, they're like, okay, keto, can't have any carbs, so they swap it with protein, not fat.
That's not what keto is. Keto is not protein. Keto is fat.
It's fat. The physiology, the idea behind it is that if you deprive your body so much of carbohydrate, instead of using that, so glucose is a carbohydrate, it's sugar. So the idea is if you minimize the amount of carbohydrate or glucose that your body is intaking, that your body will tap into fat sources and turn it into the glucose you need, the blood sugar that you need to function. But it will pull from fat, and it also creates this compound called a ketone to use as. So protein will just convert to carbs.
Bingo.
So it kind of stops that whole transition. So if you are truly doing a keto diet, you need to really drop those carbs down. You really need to push the fat up and keep that protein still moderated.
Yep.
But where I get frustrated is when I get people who are dealing with blood sugar issues or insulin sensitivities, whether that's diabetes, PCOS, etc., and they're told, my doctor told me do keto, but they didn't even bother to check with that client.
Explain, yes, or explain what that means,
or how to do it, and they don't even bother to explain the why. To them, it's just, oh, we want to keep your blood sugar low, so we're going to cut carbs and blood sugar inducing foods out of your diet. But I've talked to people who their diet's really not that healthy to begin with. They're not doing things to regulate their blood sugar. They don't need to go that extreme. It is a very unsustainable diet. Correct. It's doable, but it's
doable, but it's not sustainable. And that's the one big challenge and with keto is that long-term keto is not sustainable, and long-term we've got some big question marks about whether or not keto is healthy, because if we're trying to get 50 to 80+% of our calories from fat and we're keeping our protein the same, we're dropping our carbs and we're increasing our fat. Well, what does increasing our dietary fat do? And on top of it,
what nutrients are we missing?
What nutrients
you can have very few, if any, fruits. So you're losing all the fiber, you're losing the minerals, the vitamins, you're cutting out your fibers. You can't have any grains or starchy vegetables, and that's all this potassium and vitamin A and vitamin C and all this. So I'm not saying
there are medical reasons
it's bad. I'm saying we definitively don't know.
Correct. And there are medical reasons in which a ketogenic diet is warranted and is a good thing to potentially jumpstart somebody's weight loss, or if, some of these other use cases in which a ketogenic diet is being administered and monitored in a closely regulated medical setting. Cool. But hey, here's your go forth in keto is not really the greatest panacea for folks who have blood sugar regulation issues, especially if they are not already engaging in good dietary habits.
There are much simpler ways to approach it. So
yes,
for example, one person I was talking to was given this message to do keto and trying to figure out what that meant, and find that this person is skipping meals and is eating a lot of bread and gluten when he does eat. And, so these other things we can address carb counting, label reading, the quality of carbohydrates, meal timing, all this stuff to help regulate blood sugar. And it's going to be a lot more sustainable than drinking coconut milk and cream and, doing keto bombs. So if your doctor puts you on a keto diet, my impression from the people I'm hearing this from is that it's kind of the doctor's new blanket statement. Oh, yeah, blood sugar levels, just do keto, that with no other reasoning other than it's an easy way to monitor your blood sugars.
Yep, exactly.
That's
it's kind of the solution. You don't have to worry about it as much because now you won't need to monitor as much. Everything will level at
Yeah. Now, if you want to do keto, it can be done in a healthy way, or even just very low carb. It can be done in healthy ways, but that would go through coaching. Let's individualize it. Let's still make sure you're getting as many nutrients as you can, supplement correctly, etc. But then the other thing that I've been learning in the newer research that's coming out is what they'll notice is that for someone who does keto for about 30 to 90 days, there's a lot of benefit. The microbiome rebalances, we lose fat.
Initial benefits are great.
But then the microbiome starts to shift after that point. Yep. And we actually see it start to get less variety, less lush, less healthy seeming.
Because we don't have the variety. I can't imagine why. We're not putting in things that naturally, fat does not naturally retain things that are going to proliferate our microbiome.
Right. Yeah. And then again, kind of that sustainability thing, there's also a lot of research that shows if you're keto, low carb, and then the original thought was like allow treat days and plan treats. But what they're seeing is that if you keep your blood sugar low and then you have an overabundance of carbs and you spike it and then go back to keto, that's almost more damaging than just having this high level kind of sustained.
Yep.
So for that reason, it's like, there's no wiggle room on this diet.
Yeah, there's none. And, you know, from the folks that I've talked with and the folks that I've, from a research perspective, yeah, you have to really be adherent, because those spikes get really bad on the cheat days when they're being allowed, and it becomes I have heard of, clinically speaking, of blood sugar spikes in the 700s and 800s, if not over 1,000 on people's cheat days on keto. Yeah, for people who are keto, folks who are keto compliant for, you know, 30 days and then start being allowed cheat days, they were seeing, and I can't speak to where any of that research might be coming from because it's not published yet, but anecdotally speaking, from some of the researchers that have been talking with me, it's a pretty ugly picture. Yeah, blood sugar spikes in the 700s and 800s and over 1,000 is really, really not good for anybody. Period.
Oh, wow. No.
Yeah.
That's rough. So yeah, I think my summary on that, if I'm thinking, would be, if you are told to do a keto diet, first of all, find out if it's actually a keto diet or just a low carb.
Low carb. Yep.
Get information. Ask to make sure you've got nutrition help along the way, or hey, reach out. I have done keto myself, and I have coached athletes through it, and people just looking to lose weight, and find out if it's absolutely mandatory, like they need you to have that ketosis and those keto acids in the body, or they just want you to control your blood sugar and moderate your carbs for health reasons. Because if you don't have to go into full keto, I would really recommend, unless you really want to. It's not the easiest thing to do. It's tricky.
Exactly. And it's two truly different stories. Like, a true ketosis diet is not necessary for most folks, no matter how unregulated your blood sugar. And while it may be effective initially, don't plan on it being a lifestyle.
Yeah, long term, we're still getting conflicting research. Yeah. But quick little caveat to that. I also know that, there can be genetic differences as well. Some people who do well with that, some people who don't, and we see like triglycerides and cholesterols boost.
Correct. Yes.
And then, like anything else, it also depends how you do it. Like just sucking down cream cheese and like factory farmed butter and processed cheese is very different than avocado oil and olive oil and lean fatty fish rich fatty fish, clean fatty fish. So again, there's also different ways to do it. So these are all kinds of little nuances to the keto diet or the very low carb diet to be aware of, kind of in a quick summary. Anything else about keto diet you can think of?
No, but I really like keto fat bomb cup. Like chocolate cups.
They're tasty, don't get me wrong.
They are good.
Well, it's like cream cheese and fake sugar, so yeah.
Cream cheese, fake sugar, and chocolate?
Chocolate or peanut butter or both?
Yeah, it's not a bad, those are pretty tasty. But other than that.
But yes, that's to me still kind of a treat. So I have done keto, gotten myself into ketoacidosis. Yes, I saw weight loss. But
for me, it came right back on. For me, as soon as I went off, it was like, it
wasn't sustainable.
Yep. As soon as I started introducing carbs again, my body was
I wasn't pooping enough either. That was no fun.
No. Oh my God, the constipation was terrible. My microbiome was not pleased after for me, it wasn't even a month. I was like 2 weeks in, I was like, I need more fiber.
Yeah, I will say,
more plants.
Of all the different diet styles I have tried for, good 30 to 60 days to make sure I understand kind of how they work, how I feel, that I can plan things. Keto, was not my favorite. Just like a good, clean paleo, like gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free was probably my best. And then my own personal MRT food sensitivity.
That I would rank mine in the same order, like secondary to eating according to my MRT. The second best for me was a paleo style as well.
And again, people are different. I do think some people feel better on a vegetarian style diet and different things like that. So I'm never going to make a 100% blanket statement, but that's typically going to be my go-to unless people want to try something else, at which point, again, let's just at least make sure you're doing it in the healthiest way possible.
Yep.
So moving into low FODMAPs.
Low FODMAPs. I didn't live on a low FODMAP diet for the past 7 years, Kate. What are you talking about?
Oh, go away. Tell your story. Tell us what that was like for you, why you were on it, what were you taught about it, and what did you have to learn later on your own? Because most people are not taught well on it.
I was taught nothing other than the word you need to be on a low FODMAP diet and go look up what FODMAP is, and there's lots of good resources out there for that. That was literally the entire, like...
Really? That was it?
Oh, yeah. And this was from, like, allegedly one of the top motility specialists.
On Amazon Music.
Hang on. I don't know why she turned on.
I know. She was just talking to you.
Bringing it back. Alexa, stop. I don't know why she decided to start playing Spice Girls, but I'm not going to complain. It's a good jam.
Hey, that's okay. You know. Yeah, so I was put on a low FODMAP diet after I had my gallbladder removed. So I had some gut issues that were not resolving. So I was treated for H. pylori. I had a month of metronidazole and Flagyl, which are 2 antibiotics, and Pepto-Bismol 4 times a day, which for my lovely roommates in college, who I'm going to tag in this video, oh my God, you have no idea how much
the whole room.
I hate Pepto-Bismol in a way that I cannot even like begin to tell you. So having to take it 4 times a day, I
don't know that I've ever tasted it. I don't think I've ever actually had it. I've just seen all the commercials and all the jokes and memes.
Oh, anyway, so it was terrible. Had my gallbladder removed, and they were like, "Hey, you should be good to go, Skipper. Get on your merry way." Well, go ahead and reintroduce foods as tolerated. It'll be fine. Well, I tried reintroducing food. It did not go well. In the course of this 5-month journey leading up to let's remove your appendix, I had tried going gluten-free and then dairy-free, and like I kept eliminating more and more from my diet, and then it was like, okay, go low FODMAP, and then go low FODMAP afterwards. And as I was trying to reintroduce food,
and I think you had said at one point, like, you got to the stage, and I hear this a lot, I was afraid to eat.
Oh my God, I was
afraid to try new food.
And that was the thing. Like, I had gotten to the point, I was totally afraid to eat. I could not, it was like, all right, I have to put food in my body. I need nutrients. And who knows how this is going to react. Like, eating and trying to determine how my body was going to react to what I was eating was like terrifying for me. Because it was like, all right, well, am I going to be near enough to a bathroom? Because that's always fun. Like, so anyway, so that happened 7 years ago. And then it happened again, most recently this past fall, or spring. Seasons are meaningless. Anyway, it was the same thing. It was like, oh, you should really be on that low FODMAP diet. And it was like, I have done the low FODMAP diet. I have tracked it. All pisses off my gut. Like, there is like I've been doing this. I've been doing it for 7 years. Like, there's a couple things that I can eat, but the rest of it, like, I can't. If I put it in my body, we are SOL. Like, so I had like a safe small subgroup of foods that I would eat, and that was it, because of this like fear of how my body was going to react to what I was going to eat. And lo and behold, guess what? Being on a low FODMAP diet for all of this, it didn't work. It wasn't a solution. It was like, here's this list of things to keep track of, and if it bothers you, well, just don't eat that, because that's indicative that those sugars aren't being broken down in your digestive tract and they're fermenting instead. So I guess, Kate, we should probably define what FODMAP stands for.
Oh yeah, we could get down to that now.
Yeah. Long story
Fermentable
short,
oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols, which are basically, yes. So basically, these are things that
they're types of sugars.
They're types of sugars, carbohydrates, that most often they get into the small intestine where they would normally keep moving through. But if you have SIBO, which is a very common root cause of IBS. IBS is just a generic statement for something's not working in your gut. SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. That means these bacteria are in your small intestine where they should not be.
They shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
Guys, they shouldn't be there.
It's not a matter of if they're good or bad bacteria.
That should be an aseptic. Yes, it should be. The small intestine should be an aseptic environment.
Sterile.
It should be sterile. There shouldn't be anything in there.
So, but for various reasons, there's a lot of them, but common ones are either stomach acid is not acidic enough and it doesn't kill bacteria as it's going through the body, or you're
like when you've been on a PPI for 20 years.
On PPI a lot, if you're stressed a lot, certain medications, what are H. pylori. So different things can cause your stomach acid to not be strong enough so that bacteria can make it through. Normally stomach acid should kill any sort of pathogens, but if your stomach acid's not as it should be, this can get in. Or conversely, if you are constipated or not pooping enough, and you should be pooping at least once a day. I know people don't say that. They don't think that, but it should be at least once a day.
At least once.
At least once, 1 to 3 times a day, solid, well-formed, no pain, no pressure.
Yep.
So if you're not clearing enough, then same thing. It can migrate from the large intestine and colon, where we do want bacteria, into that small intestine.
Yep.
So we get SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth. So these FODMAPS foods, these foods that contain these fermentable short chain sugars, essentially get into the small intestine as they're being processed. That bacteria is there. It loves it. It ferments it and it eats it. And guess what? Bacteria get gas just like we do. So they release these byproducts of gas that get stuck in your small intestine and has nowhere to go.
Yep.
Bloating, gassing, indigestion, heartburn, all kinds of things. So most often, if you are put on a low FODMAPS diet for IBS, it likely means you have SIBO.
Yes.
Which means you should get tested for that and treated for that.
Yes, and that is the biggest.
Let me rephrase. If you get put on a low FODMAPS diet and you feel better on it. Now, your case, you didn't feel better, so it's probably something else.
Yes.
But if you do feel better, it probably means you are now not feeding those bacteria. You should get tested because, Andee, how well does that FODMAPS diet work for actually taking care of that bacteria?
Hey, guess what? If you're feeding those bacteria or starving them, they still exist and they just kind of hang out. And if they're not being fed enough, they just say, now you see me, now you don't. And they just go dormant. They just go into hiding. They just go to sleep. They don't go away. They still hang out in your small intestine and just wait to be woken up when you feed them again.
Yes. So if you have been put on a low FODMAP diet and you start to feel better on it, and you follow it for however long they recommend, 4 to 6 to 8 weeks, and then you start to reintroduce foods to come out of that program, and you start to feel worse again, that is because that bacteria is still there. It goes into hibernation mode, and it makes this little force field called a biofilm layer and goes to sleep behind that. Now, when you start feeding it again, then it's like, oh, hello, hello, and it comes back out to play, and you're right back where you started.
Yep. And the awful part about this is that you can cycle through every 4 to 6 weeks for 7 years.
So did you feel better when you were on the diet at all? I mean, I know you and I have been dealing with a wealth of GI issues and systemic issues for you, but was that a part of it?
So, for me, it was one of those things that if I stuck very, very, because, within FODMAP, there's those 4 different categories, and you can have some categories bother you more than others, depending upon
the F bothers you more than the M.
Right, depending upon what type of bacteria you have and what your particular digestive issue is per se. So, I mean, there was definitely an improvement for me being on FODMAP versus being off of FODMAP. I definitely felt better when I was more adherent to it, and there were definitely initially I was very rigorous in my app in terms of marking which things bothered me and how much, and at one point I think I probably could have told you that it was more of the F's and the D's so much than the M's, and the P's have seemed to be more all right for me. But sustainability.
Yeah. And it wasn't dealing with the root cause. You were masking symptoms with the diet.
It was like as soon as I would be like, oh, maybe I can go, nope. And it was
yo-yoing.
It was
like a yo-yo diet of its
frustrating.
own kind.
And it was like, okay, I need to be super compliant with FODMAP forever. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. And it's a complicated diet. Again, like you said, there's different things. The fructo, oligo, mono, certain bacteria are more prone to certain ones. And then it'll get into stuff like you look at the Monash app, which is kind of the gold standard. And it's like, Brussels sprouts are okay if you only have 2.
If you only have 2.
Yeah.
And guess what?
Then it's a green go food.
And then but for me, Brussels sprouts were like, oh, do you want an instantaneous blowout? Eat some Brussels sprouts. You go for it, girl.
Yeah. So I guess the summary of the low FODMAPs is if you're on it and it works, demand to get tested for SIBO.
Correct.
Because, and this is, I have had actual GI doctors tell me this, and at first, I was so excited, yes, the GI doctor's realizing, diet matters. And he's like, yeah, anytime I have an IBS patient, I put them on the low FODMAPs diet and they're good to go. I'm like, cool.
And then you're like,
and then what?
And then what?
Well, I don't know. They're good then. They just wean off it eventually if they can.
Yeah. And for me, that was the defining straw of being goodbye, GI motility specialist who supposedly tops marks. No.
So again, it's I applaud, like I said at the beginning, I really applaud that doctors are starting to kind of come on board. They are doing this research. They understand that this diet exists. They're trying to get people on it and doing that instead of just prescribing pills. But a little knowledge only goes so far. And again, just like a pill being prescribed to mask a symptom doesn't treat the root cause, a diet prescribed to mask the symptoms doesn't treat the root cause. So yes, diet is important. It is better to do low FODMAPs than to eat junk food and feel horrible, but you still need to get tested for that SIBO and then deal with it. And then just a heads up to anyone, if you end up finding out you have it, it is hard to eradicate. Be patient with it. You're going to have to go through multiple rounds, most likely of antibiotics or herbal antibiotics. And then you're going to have to rebuild your gut from there. So just kind of giving you that heads up. It's not easy.
And by the way, the herbal route, way more comfortable than the antibiotic route. Personal experience, the herbal route is also a much easier protocol to adhere to, and you will hate your life less.
Yeah.
Just
And
saying.
yeah, a big difference with herbal protocols versus prescription medicine protocols for any antibacterial thing is usually that your prescriptions are typically going to be like a driving force. They are faster, so you only have to do like 10 to 14 days usually, but it hits your whole body and it obliterates all good and bad bacteria.
Yes. Yeah.
Herbals are going to be a little gentler. They are going to take a little longer, but they're going to leave the good bacteria mostly intact. So you don't have to plow through and then rebuild all the good stuff from nothing. Because again, we've talked about that civil war that happens when when you're sterile, when you have a sterile environment. So I think that's all I have on FODMAPs.
I could say something grossly inappropriate about FODMAPs, but we'll F FODMAPs.
Oh. It has its place. It can help manage symptoms.
It can.
But you need to still get to that root cause.
But you need to get to the root cause.
Yes, because managing symptoms can help you just breathe.
It can help you you live life, and it can help as a starting point, for sure. But it's not a lifetime solution. And if you've been told that it is, it's not. So I promise you it's not.
There are answers. Keep searching.
Yeah.
Reach out.
Keep searching. Reach out.
Yeah. Ask questions. Learn. Yep. So then the last one to kind of move into is autoimmune protocol. So this is another one that's I've only heard about more popularly in the last couple years, 2 to 3 years maybe.
I've been familiar for a little bit longer, but yeah.
But it's starting to like gain that popularity, like where you can find a lot more resources.
Like people hear about it, like, oh my gosh, like what, I'm trying the AIP, and you're like, why? And they're like, I don't know, I just heard about it and I think it's great. And you're like, do you have an autoimmune disease, or do you suspect that you have some sort of underlying inflammatory condition? Question mark.
So yes, the AIP, the autoimmune protocol, again, there's sort of different variations, but the idea is they are removing foods that they think cause exacerbation of symptoms and inflammation, and they are instead filling you with nutrient-dense foods that are supposed to help hit commonly lacking nutrients like iodine, like we talked about before, and other things to help rebuild your mitochondria, which are your energy powerhouses in your body, kind of like your little factories for energy, and other things. So premise is good. And then to kind of touch on a question someone else that was wrapped in with this question, when we talk about the AIP diet or the FODMAPs, they don't have specific macronutrient recommendations. So kind of touching back on that keto, you could do either the AIP or the low FODMAPs in a paleo style, in a keto style, in a high carb endurance athlete style. Like it has nothing really directly to do with macronutrients. They've got some little kind of ranges, but they're separate. So the keto is specifically about macronutrients. The AIP and FODMAPs are more about the specific food types, not as much the ratio. It's in there some, but it's not quite like keto, where that's keto
is like, I'm going to get most of my calories from fat, I'm going to keep my protein the same, I'm going to drop my carbs. AIP has nothing to do with fat, protein, and carbs, but has to deal with what food you are eating to get the fat, protein, and carbs.
And they don't give quite the rigorous ranges of fat, carbs, and proteins. You have a lot more flexibility with that. So with that said, a little caveat. AIP is kind of that idea. And I have seen it work for people, but the general story I hear from people is, one, very strict, very little to no wiggle room, and it can take a year before you start seeing progress.
Correct.
And results. So it's very, very slow. So yeah, so it's one that it's like, it's good. You can, again, you know, make sure you're getting that good variety, make sure you're getting your protein, carbs, fats in good ratios for you, make sure you're eating clean. My biggest downside to it is so slow because it's cookie cutter.
Yep. And there's different phases to it, right? It's like, okay, well, let's do our elimination phase, and you're gonna, remove anything that's pro-inflammatory, and you're gonna not have grains and nuts or seeds or, nightshades and eggs and dairy and, no, okay, great. Yes, in some ways, many of those things should be avoided anyway, like gluten. But at the same point in time, there are other things on the AIP that are also that they want you to avoid. Like if you're truly on an AIP, they want you to avoid anti-inflammatory medications. Advil, ibuprofen, Motrin, Aleve, any of your prescription, high dose aspirin, like all of those are also supposed to be not included in an AIP strict diet. So like for athletes or people that are training, how many people do you know that pop a couple Advil as needed? I've got a headache, I popped a couple Advil. Well, guess what? You just busted your AIP.
Yeah. So, but that's the general gist of what it's for. And again, you can do it healthy or unhealthy, just depending, like, like anything else, you need that variety and all that. But so I won't get into the details of that, because that's sort of any diet in my mind, any eating pattern, eating style. You want to make sure you got good, high quality, good variety, all that. Yeah. My biggest thing is simply my issue. Yeah. It is so slow.
It's so slow because for your first month to 3 months is your elimination phase.
Yeah. So in this one,
then your reintroduction phase.
Yeah.
Which can also last forever.
I had someone who was doing it. She told me like she was doing it for her hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's.
Mm-hmm.
And it took her over a year, almost a year, about a year, she said she was doing it. And to me, I was just like, dude, that's impressive, because I would have just been like, this isn't working after like
one food every 5 to 7
3
days.
months, and just been like, I'm out. But so a year later, and she's like, my eyebrows are finally starting to grow back in a little bit, and I don't feel quite so cold all the time. Wow. Like,
I mean, like, that's insane.
Like a year? Like, I mean, a year's better than never, but I was like, damn.
But yeah, I mean,
but yes. So what she ended up doing after all this, like, oh my God, like I kept thinking, like, and mentioning, like, this is so slow. You can do this faster. So finally,
you can do it faster.
She got her personalized MRT test done.
Which, by the way, yeah, guys, the MRT shortcuts like the AIP.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a.
Now, it is also very, very strict, but not as long.
It is, yes, it is very, very strict, but it is not as long. And instead of having to basically start the MRT somewhere in the middle, once you've gone through the elimination phase and then started re-adding and figured out what works and what doesn't, you get the list of, here's what's not going to be bothersome, start there. Mm-hmm. So instead of like running a marathon before you start the marathon, you just have to run a marathon instead of 2 back to back.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a lot faster way to springboard into it. My battery may die, but we're going to go as long as we can here. So it is, because again, you want to deal with, okay, if you're put on an autoimmune protocol, you are dealing with an autoimmune disease, I assume at that point. And I know I posted it like in the Thrive group, but essentially when there's an autoimmune, number one thing, deal with food sensitivities, like your specific ones. Deal with gut health, heal the leaky gut, heal the intestinal permeability, deal with any pathogens and infections. Check to make sure you've got like heavy metals are not an issue or toxic burden. It is common to have lead toxicity or mercury or, different things, just it happens. Or, pesticides. I've had people who grew up near farms and were around glyphosate, Roundup, and that's issues. So it's like there are things to do. Then you tackle these things when you've
Yep.
got an autoimmune. So you don't just get on one cookie cutter diet, you personalize it to you based on your
Yes.
labs and what you need,
Yes.
what your gut microbiome is, what your inflammation markers are, what your food sensitivities are,
Yes.
what your nutrient deficiencies and insufficiencies are. And that's going to be the best, fastest way to get that process moving.
Correct. Yeah. And guys, I cannot I cannot herald enough the importance of doing the thing that is right for your body. And so here's my new hat, guys. It says biomedical clinical research informatician. We are our own people. And what works for me is not going to work for Kate, and what works for Kate doesn't work for me, and what works for Kate doesn't work for Kate's sister, and what works for Kate's sister doesn't work for Kate. What works for me doesn't work for my aunt. What works for my aunt does not work for me. Like we are all our own individuals. And yep, something can point you in the right direction.
Yeah. Personalize. It is going to be the fastest route from A to B if you know, and I know a lot of people are like, labs are expensive. I don't want to spend a whole lot. Like, I get that. And so obviously, again, everyone's got to do what's right for them. But like, if you can, it is going to be the most accelerated path from feeling as cruddy as you feel where you are to feeling as good as you can.
Yep.
By test, don't guess, assess, find out.
Yes.
Know
Test,
the data.
Don't guess. Know the data. And I'm going to put a plug out there. If you have your genetic profile, we can potentially do stuff with that as well, because there's information out there that we know about our genetic profiles and things related to nutrition as well. So that's a whole other thing that we could talk about for another day, that's all.
But
that's
like
another
we've
thing
talked about, like those
well.
puzzle pieces, like the idea of, cut out anti-inflammatory common foods, make sure you do this. That's like all that frame of the puzzle. Those are all like the basics that just set that foundation. Like, stop eating crappy food, start eating regular meal time, start being aware. But until you get all those puzzle pieces, the more puzzle pieces you have, the faster that's going to come together. The more of that like big box picture on the box, the more that you have of that, the more you can start to put things together in the puzzle itself. But if you don't know what that should look like, because you don't know what your labs are, you don't know what your iodine level is, you don't know what your B vitamins are, you don't know what your gut microbiome looks like, you don't know if you've got H. pylori, you don't know, what your cortisol levels are like. Without knowing that, you're doing it blindly, and you can do stuff that way. I mean, obviously just hitting those foundations, good sleep, manage stress, high quality multivitamin, like that's all good starts. If you know that you're already kind of doing the basics and it's not getting where you want to go, or your doctors put you on a diet and you don't understand why, you don't understand what the end game is, ask.
Find the team that's right for you.
Yes. So I think that's all I had. So hopefully that answers some questions. I know, again, there's so much. So if you have questions about that, if you have deeper questions, follow up, if you have your own specific story questions, like, well, wait, I was told this, let us know. We're happy to talk about it, answer questions. But hopefully that gives you kind of an understanding of when, from a kind of a prescriptive medical side, if you're told to do a keto, a low FODMAPS, or an AIP, what that might mean, some of the pros and cons, and what we encourage you to do as follow-up.
Yep, and or why. Thanks, gang.
Awesome. Well, thank you for everybody who's been giving us positive feedback. It's really nice to know this is helpful. It is definitely our passion to spread awareness, try to educate, try to get people validation answers restoration. That's kind of my motto. If you don't feel good, you're not crazy. It's not all in your head.
It's not all crazy. It's not
answers.
you. You're not insane. No, none of those things.
None of that. Sometimes conventional medicine just doesn't know the answers, but they're not always great at admitting that. But there is info out there. There are specialists. There is a lot of great research. Keep asking.
And you can feel better. I mean, like at the end of the day, you can feel better. I am living proof. I am living proof. Not only did they not kill me, but here I am, footloose and fancy free, and a whole person smaller than I was. I actually had someone say, did you, like, I was checking into my doctor's appointment, and they're like, did you have bariatric surgery? And I was like, no. I just figured out that my guts were not good and got them good again.
It's amazing. It's amazing. You've done amazing work, Andee.
You've done amazing work, Kate.
We've done amazing work. So I would love
You've
to
done
work
amazing work
with anybody else. We can get you also wonderful results.
Yeah. Feel better, people. You can do it. We can help.
Yes, we can. All right. Have a good one, everybody, and we will talk to you next week.
Bye.
So I hope you learned something new in there. As always, let me know what your aha moment was, or reach out if you have further questions or want to request a workshop. The one little editing note or editor's note I want to throw in here is there is a moment in the talk where we're discussing the AIP diet, and Andee lists items that are not allowed on the autoimmune diet. And one that specifically she lists the NSAIDs and states prescription meds, which are basically, a lot of them can be stronger level NSAIDs such as Naproxen or Naproxen. Now, before anyone accidentally interprets that as thinking she's saying, hey, quit your meds if you're trying to truly do the AIP, please note that's not what we were saying. Andee is just sharing the given protocol. So she's just reading right off of the website. Well, she's not reading, but you can go and look it up. This is not our condoning of quitting these meds. It is simply that Dr. Sarah Ballantyne's outline says that yes, NSAIDs such as aspirin or ibuprofen are technically listed under the to be removed. However, this again drives home the need to personalize and individualize. If your doctor told you to take a medicine, we are not telling you to quit it without their guidance. So Dr. Ballantyne's outline is a great starting point, but like everything we've talked about, it is just a cookie cutter starting point. And if you do want to try the AIP diet, you can use her resources. But like any general elimination diet or therapeutic diet, it's not tailored to you. And like the disclaimers in these videos all say is you still need guidance. So it might need to be adapted a little bit, work with your blood work, work with your medication list. So you want to approach any of these diets with guidance from a healthcare professional versed in these diets. So that is it. Have an amazing week, and I look forward to talking with you next week.